Bonjour, ohayo gozaimasu. My name is Jean-Noel Girard, International Director of Champagne de Vaud, and we are going to taste together some Champagne de Vaud. So first I would like to introduce this beautiful house, which is a very old house. In fact, it's one of the oldest champagne. It was created in 1846. But today, what makes Champagne de Vaud quite unique and unusual is first the location. In Champagne, we always mention Reims and Epernay, where you have some large commercial champagne houses. But in fact, when you analyze the location of Champagne, there is three and four sub-regions. If you look at the four sub-regions, there is one which is quite interesting because it's the largest Pinot Noir region. And when you know that Pinot Noir is the largest grape variety in Champagne, it must be an important one. But it's probably the less known one. This is known as Côte des Bars. This region is in the southern part of Champagne, just on the edge of Burgundy. So this is the reason why, because of quite a rich soil, it's perfect for Pinot Noir. So this region, you mainly find Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. And where do you find this beautiful house of the Vaud? Of course, in the Côte des Bars. So the headquarters is in Bar-sur-Seine. And we are trying to make a beautiful champagne, which is what we call very food friendly. And I think the modern style of champagne nowadays is a kind of champagne you can enjoy, of course, as an aperitif, of course for celebration, like most everyone will think about champagne, but also we also love our champagne as a wine with food. And for this reason, you need to make a champagne which is quite complex, quite rich, but still elegant and fine. So how do you reach this kind of style? So first of all, when you make a wine like Champagne, the beautiful comes from the region, the grape variety, and the vineyards. So we carefully select about 100 hectares in our region, and from this selection, we look at the best timing for the picking. We look at the best pressing stage. You know, in Champagne, when you press grapes, we have different stage. If you look at what we call the first pressing, which is called cuvée, this is where you have the most elegant style of wines. And then when you continue the pressing, you end up with what we call a taille, which is a little bit more rustic in a way, so not so elegant. At the Vaud Champagne, we only use first pressing juice. Then, when we also make the pressing, sometimes for some specific cuvée, like what we call our Collection D, we also, within this first cuvée, we also separate this in two. And the first part, we call it the heart of the cuvée, and that's the most elegant, the most pure, almost austere wine. But this wine will give you such a great potential of aging. And aging for us is important. In Champagne, a non-vintage, which is the majority of the champagnes available, will be aged for a minimum of 15 months on lease. Now, at the Vaud, our minimum is 3 years, so that's quite a lot. But the flagship of the Vaud, our Collection D, is not 3 years, it's 5 years. That's quite unusual. And when you get to this age of 5 years, you really have something rich, complex, but still fresh and elegant because of, again, coming to the first pressing, coming to the heart of the cuvée. And in addition to this elegance from the pressing, you also can get more freshness based on the technique of vinification you use. At the Vaud, we are a little bit special because we don't like to stick with one technique. We combine different techniques. So one is, of course, the vinification made in stainless steel vats with malolactic. So in Champagne, like any wine, we do the alcoholic fermentation and then followed by the malolactic fermentation, which is a way to reduce the acidity and to soft your wine. Basically, at the Vaud, we use this technique, but also we do the same without malolactic. So having no malolactic, not only you have a higher freshness level, but also you have different flavors. So we always say that, when you have malolactic, so it's kind of a transforming acidity, which is malic acid, which is like green apple flavors, to lactic acid, which is more like the acidity you can get from milk, yogurt. And when you do this stopping of the malolactic, you have more freshness. There's a third technique we use for the fermentation, is the one we do in barrels, oak barrels. So we use a very specific size, which is larger than the barrique you have in Burgundy or in Bordeaux. So we use the 300 liters. And also what we like for this oak fermentation is we source today our oak only from the Champagne region, which is quite unusual, I have to say. But this is for us to show that the beauty of the region in Champagne, it comes from the vineyards, but also come from the oak forests, which we have 3 main ones within the Champagne region, which are very, very much beautiful. So by doing this, we very much support the whole economy in Champagne. And our wine, which are aged, but also where they do their fermentation in oak, have something quite soft. We never do the malolactic when we do the oak fermentation in order to keep the freshness. So these 3 techniques I just mentioned allow you to have still a complexity, but also a lot of freshness. And freshness in Champagne is important. When you have your wine, you want, yes, the mouth, the mousse to be very delicate, but you want still an elegance, especially on the finish, which also make your wine better with food. It's always easier to enjoy wine which has a good freshness with food compared to wine which is sometimes might be a little bit too heavy or sweet. So this is very much what we are trying to reach, which is most difficult. On one side, the richness, complexity, and on the other side, the freshness, elegance. And of course, based on the grape variety, we use only Pinot Noir and only Chardonnay. We don't use Meunier because there is almost no Meunier in the region of the Côte d'Ivoire. So the Pinot Noir brings the structure, the richness, nice fruit flavors, when the Chardonnay is supposed to bring you more finesse, elegance. So when you combine this with what I mentioned to you before, you really end up having lovely champagne. Now there's another element which I didn't mention is the reserve wines. The reserve wines are the wines which will not be going in the bottle for the second fermentation, but we keep these wines in the big oak barrels, which will be used the following years. And that's something which is very important for us because we go up to 40% reserve wine. So that's something which really add depth in your wine, but longer finish as well. So if you look at our collection here, which are flagship non-vintages, the oldest wine which come inside will be 1995, which is from one of our Solera barrel. So the Solera is a technique which is not so common in Champagne, but quite common in sherry. So it's a way to combine every year the wine of the year, but with the previous years. So we started this technique in 1995. So when you look at all our non-vintages, the oldest wine is quite old. So, but again, it's not to make your champagne too heavy, but it's to bring all the complexity you expect from a great champagne.